Hello and welcome, useful content creators, to this pop-up live. I think I'm hearing my music playing in the background, which is good, but I want that to be a little bit lower, so I'm going to stop it. I'm going to stop that music for now. Now, this is not a planned live. This is very much impromptu. It's very much spontaneous, harkening back to the days when I had much more time and I was able to come on live a lot of times without giving any warning. Today is a day where I have a small window of time, so I wanted to come on and talk about something that has been on my mind anyway. I've been creating content lately that might be useful for you. So thanks for joining me, useful content creators. I know no people were warned of this live, so I don't expect people to actually come on, but this is being recorded. So even if it's not something that we get to interact with live, I'm going to have the recording for myself so I can share it with you later on. So if you're on, feel free to say hello. If you're on, feel free to come on and I will actually show the comments because this is me being here actually live at this point. So what I wanted to talk about today was something that's been happening with my content that is very, very, very interesting. In fact, I think it's a way that I've been creating content that I've not done before. And I think it's something that could be useful for you to know when you are creating content, because not everybody creates content the same. Not everybody takes the same approach to the content strategy. And sometimes, in order for things to work for you, you need to take a different approach than everyone else is taking. So this may work for you. This has been working for me. This may work for you. And if you look at this and if you think it's useful, go ahead and use it. Take it and use it, implement it in the way you create content. Now, what we're going to talk about today is this. We're going to talk about an unusual way to repurpose content, going from small to big. And why is that unusual? It's unusual because most of the advice you get from people on how to repurpose content is going from very big to small. So what people will say, and I have said this too, and I still continue to say this because it's a great way to repurpose content. What people say is that they will say, make a large, long form piece of content. For example, you can make a live stream, you can make a long form video, well, a live show, a live stream, or you can make something like a podcast and you create that, you plan that out, you structure it, you make sure that it has all the elements that you want in it. Especially for things like live shows and podcasts, it takes a lot of work because what you have to do is you have to come up with a premise, you have to come up with a structure, you have to decide whether you want to do it or solo, you want to do it with someone else, as in have a co-host with you, or you want to do it with have an interview show. There are many different ways you could do these long form pieces of content. But if you want to do a long form piece of content, it does take work. It does take some planning with it. But let's just suppose that you're someone who you don't actually have time to do all of that work initially. All you have time to do is create something short and create something small. And if that thing actually works for you, then you want to ramp it up into bigger pieces of content that you can then use to build relationship with people. Because if we talk about the funnel and we talk about the buyer's journey and creating content, we often find that the shorter form pieces of content exist earlier in your interactions with customers. They exist at the top of the funnel rather than the bottom of the funnel. Now, it is possible to create insightful short content, but most times when you're talking about meeting someone new, you're not going to have a long conversation with that person. The conversation is going to be short, it's going to be to the point, it's going to be an introduction. You want to share something that makes you memorable, you want to share something that makes you seem like you have value to the person, so that when next they see you, they're going to remember you and say, oh, you that person who does X, Y, or Z. And that is what short form content is supposed to be like. It's supposed to be an introduction to you, something that opens a gate to the value you can provide to the person who is looking at it. And so using that, we're going to talk about how you can use this short form content in order to create some bigger pieces of content later on. So essentially going backwards, an unusual way to repurpose content, going from small to big. And let me explain how that has worked for me over the past few months, right? So the direction of your content ideas is important. Sometimes you have a thought, and sometimes the thing that is overwhelming for people is taking that thought that you have, an idea, and turning it into something that can be put out into the public for people to consume, for them to find you, to have to do business with you. That's a difficult thing. So you might have, let's just say you have 20 different ideas about how you can share your expertise with people, but the hard thing is to take those ideas and actually make them useful. Actually say, hey, I can help you in this way. And because I can help you in this way, this is how I'm demonstrating this to you through my content. That's a difficult thing. It's not an easy thing to take all of these ideas and then turn it into content. So instead of making this big piece of content, instead of making something that is long and will take a ton of planning and will take scripting and will take all of this time and so on, what you might want to do, you might want to put it out into the public to test the idea. You might want people to just see it. You might want people to just look at it and give some feedback. And if you're in a community, if you're on a particular platform and you generally interact with that platform, it's a good way to get feedback. It's a good way to do things. Hey, Alan, I'm seeing you. Thanks, I appreciate that. I will keep up the good work. Thanks for being on and for making that comment. It's a way that you can test things so that you can make content later on. So one of the ways that I have been doing that or have done that is I joined Twitter many months ago. Well, it's X now. But the problem with me being on Twitter or X is that it's not really a good place to test all of my ideas because I don't have a community there. Most of my community exists either on Facebook or on LinkedIn, mostly for B2B and for people who I think might buy from me, they exist on LinkedIn. So the best place for me to get the feedback on these ideas that I'm having is to put it on LinkedIn. So what I've decided to do months ago, I've decided to treat LinkedIn a little bit like Twitter, in that I don't have to have these fully fleshed out videos, ideas, carousels, long form posts. What I've begun to do is I've begun to take just general thoughts I've been having and I've begun to put it out into the feed. And those thoughts, sometimes I put out a short form text, just a thought I was having, and it got real great engagement. It probably was one of my best posts for the year. And sometimes I put out a short thought and it gets no engagement. It gets crickets. But that's not the point. The point is not so much to try and get engagement with it. The point is to ventilate those things and look at what people are saying in the comments in order for you to decide, oh, there might be something here. There might be a way I can expand this. So sometimes that happens when you put the content out as a post, and sometimes that happens when you put out a piece of content and then people come into your comments and you can respond to those comments. So you will put your comments in reply to somebody else's question or comments on your content, and you can generate ideas from there. So here's what has happened. So recently I put out a piece of content and somebody came into the comments and they asked a question. And I responded to them in the comments, a pretty robust response inside of the comments at that time. So let me show you what the response was in the comments. And this will all tie together as I get into it and I show you what I really mean about it. I'm going to show you what the response was, right? So this was the response. So they were asking me about what is distribution delivery structure. And so I did this. I made this response. I said, the parts and order of how you put together your video so it's engaging when you deliver it to your audience. So the hook on all those different things and all those different things, I responded to them. But interestingly, another part of that response was inside of the copy for the video I posted itself. It said this. It said this short piece of content here, this short piece of copy. It said, if you create a video without a goal, without a clear message, without a specific audience, without a delivery structure and an appropriate distribution platform, then you're wasting time and effort. Now, remember this. This is important that you remember this piece of content right here. This is a part of the copy that went along with the video that I posted. And so the person who was asking the comment down on the question was in response to this very specific part here. As you can see my cursor going here, this part here, that is the delivery structure part of it. So what that caused me to do is I now decided, well, you know what? I'm going to respond to them. And this was the response here. This was the response. I responded to them. But then I decided, you know what? Let me go and create an entire video about that. Now, I'm not going to show you the video that I created. So I did create a video in response to them. The video was about 2 minutes long. So you can see from the very jump that the content is getting longer. It started off here. It started off with this little piece of content here. Let me go back and show you what it is. This piece of text here with this. Then it evolved into this, a bigger response. So this here, piece of content, fed this. And then I made a video about it, right? A 2-minute video. And then today, if you have been tracking my content, today I posted a carousel, which is essentially an expansion of this small piece of text. It's a 4 or 5 lines here, small piece of text. And this is what that looked like. Let me show you what that looked like. It looked like this. So this is the one that I would have put up today. It says 5 things your videos must have so you're not wasting time. Let me take down this banner now so that you're not wasting time when you create your content, obviously, right? So this is a post that I put up today. It's a carousel. So I took this piece of content here, this one, let me show you. And then I expanded it. After I made a video, I then expanded it from this small piece into this. Now, the reason I was able to do that is because when I put forward this idea, I had a clear idea of what these things meant. It was part of my expertise, but I had never taken the time before to really work it out and to really go deep. And this is what the carousel forced me to do. It forced me to go back and pull together a disparate set of thoughts and put them in order so that I could create this carousel. And so the carousel goes like this. Many people make videos, not many videos are good. But if you get these 5 things right, you'll make great videos. So this is me creating the carousel, reading it to myself in my own time, right? And then it says, get your goal, your audience, your message, structure, and distribution. And then it says, let me show you how. And then it talks about your goal, what the outcomes are, what are you hoping to get with your video, and it goes on to give greater detail. If you have to create your goal in your video, you have to know what the goals are, such as it might be DMs, emails, awareness, and you have to be specific about it, not just make more money, as people say, just make more revenue. You have to be sure to use a call to action that matches your goal. And then I go into the audience, which was another one of the points. I expand this out. Who is the one person that you're making this video for? And then I have the bullet points below that, have a clear description of the exact client you're trying to attract, talk to that specific person when you're creating. And so I make this whole carousel. So it talks about the goal, the audience, the message, the structure, which I've done a whole video on this already, and the distribution. Where does the video go and how do you plan to get it to your exact client? So let's go back and see this again. This was part of the original post. We expanded it, carried it up, went deeper, and expanded it into a video. And then out of that video, then I created this carousel. So you could see it's getting larger and larger and larger. It went from small, a thought and idea that was put out, and it's getting bigger as I'm adding more to it, as I'm going deeper with the ideas. And so when it gets to this point where I'm making this carousel out of it now, I'm saying to myself, well, what else can I do with this? This has been received well. People are asking questions. People are in the comments. They're making comments about it. They're saying it's helpful, it's useful. And that now is sending signals to me that this now could become a larger piece of content. So what I'm considering doing now, I'm probably going to do it, is taking this and recording a podcast episode specifically on this topic of 5 things your video must have so you're not wasting time. And I already basically have the script out here, right? And I want to make a real big point about this. The big point I want to make about this is that not only did it come from a small piece of content and is expanding up to a big piece of content, the other thing that is very important about this is that as we go along, each time you iterate on it, each time you do it, each time you share it, it's one idea that is getting bigger. So which means you don't have to come up with anything new. And the second part of it is that each time you share it, you have the opportunity to expand, to clarify, to do more so that you yourself understand the topic more. You yourself understand what you're communicating better. And the people who are receiving it, your audience, they get more value out of it as well. So not only are you making the thing clearer for yourself, you're also making it more valuable to your audience. So you go from small to big. So again, let's go over it one more time. The content started here with these few lines, which was part of some copy I added with a video. And the video, didn't have anything much to do with this. It just had this particular part of it was copy, because sometimes, well, most of the times my copy is different to what's in my video. And then it went to I created a video out of this. And then out of the same topic, I created this carousel, which I put out today. So this carousel is out now today. And then out of this carousel, based on the response, and it wasn't many people, it didn't seem to get a lot of engagement, but the people who responded, as well as what I'm hearing from them, the specific thing tells me, is sending the signal to me that this is a piece of content I can expand and will be useful to people. So now I've committed that I'm going to take this piece of content, this carousel here, that talks about the 5 things that your videos must have so you're not wasting time, and these 5 topics here, and expand that into a longer form piece of content that is in my podcast. And so that is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn this into a podcast episode. And so this is what this is. So if you want to if you don't have the time to make a large piece of content from the get-go, you don't have the understanding of how to make this large piece of content, sometimes it makes sense to start small. You start with a thought, you start with an idea, you share that idea publicly. And once you get feedback on that idea, and it doesn't have to be many people, if 2 or 3 people interact with it, if 2 or 3 people make comments on the content, then you have some sense as to, okay, this is throwing me signals in this direction. This is telling me maybe this might have some potential in it. Then you take that idea and then you expand it up to a bigger piece of content. It might be a longer text content that you expand it to. In my instance, it was a video. I expanded this short piece of content here into a video, this piece of content here into a video, just this piece of text. And then I expanded it into a carousel, which is like how many pages? It's like let's just say 11 pages, an 11-page carousel with much more points. And then because of this carousel and the feedback that I got on it, and every time I release the content, it's getting more engagement. Because of the feedback I got on it, I now can take that and expand that into a larger piece of content, which I am going to do, which is going to be a podcast episode for the Useful Content or Make Useful Content podcast. And so that is how you move from a small piece of content, right? After me using a LinkedIn like Twitter, just putting out ideas and a couple sentences here and there, all the way up to a large piece of content. So that is exactly what you have to do if you want to create content, but you don't have time to start in a large piece of content. You start with small ideas, small thoughts, share those things publicly, validate them, and then ramp up your content bit by bit until you get to a large piece of content. And that's exactly what I'm going to do with this piece of content right here. I'm going to have a podcast. It's probably not going to get released this week or next week. It's probably going to be a few weeks from now. But I'm going to record a podcast that talks specifically about the 5 things your videos must have so you're not wasting time when you create your videos. A useful guide for smart business owners like yourself. And so when that podcast is released, I'll then reference the fact that this was the process of how I got to here. And so if you don't have time, you don't have the ability to create long-form content, even though I recommend that you do, and then you take that and you create smaller pieces of content and distribute them where they need to go. You can always start in something small, a thought, an idea. And as the idea becomes validated through engagement, through questions, through comments, through interaction, then you ramp that thing up, especially if that idea gets people to come in the DMs and ask you about your services and ask you about how you can help them. It leads to conversions, especially if a small idea does that. That's enough validation for you to take that small idea and then now expand it into bigger pieces of content in order for you to capture a wider range of people and for you to build better relationships with the people who are following your content. And that is the way that should work. Yeah, and so that's what my thoughts are. I really wanted to come on and share this because it was just swirling around in my mind, and I had like 13 minutes to spare, and I decided I would come on and talk about this. If you have any questions, feel free to jump in now and ask me about it. how I moved from this tiny piece of content to a larger piece of content. How does that work? And the topic I'm talking about, just so you know, an unusual way to repurpose, going from small to big. So if anyone is out there and they want to ask me questions, feel free to do so and I'll answer them. But this really is something that I'm going to continue to do. I'm going to continue to share just spontaneous ideas on LinkedIn. I know it's not like Twitter, but my audience is not on Twitter really, even though I share content there. My audience is really on LinkedIn. And as I get those things validated, I'm going to continue to take those things and make content out of those things, from small to big content. So I hope my mic sounds great. The last time I was on here, I had the wrong microphone on. I was on streaming live with Shri, and I don't know why nobody told me it did not sound like it usually sounded. I listened back to the video and it did not sound as good as it usually sounds. But hopefully today it sounds pretty good. And if it does sound pretty good, let me know. I know I'm basically coming to the end of the live stream now, but if it sounds great, let me know, and I will and I'll be happy about that. So because I'm planning to take this content, of course, and repurpose it as well. So if there are no comments, if there is no feedback, if there are no questions, you can feel free to ask your questions. If there are no questions that are being left, I'm not seeing any coming up right now. I've only had one comment earlier. Clean and clear, great. So Alan is still there watching. Thank you, Alan, for that. Alan said it's clean and clear, great, excellent. So that's good that it's clean and clear, because I was worried about how it sounded and if I was using the correct mic for this, because this is the mic that I should be using and not the one on the computer. So that's good. That's good. All right, everyone, useful content creators, thanks so much for joining me on this pop-up live, this one that I did not plan to do. I just threw this thing together like 5 minutes ago, well, 5 minutes before I started, and I just decided I would come on and talk to you a little bit. So it's great to see you on. Thanks, Alan, for joining us. Thanks, whoever else came on and just hung out for a little bit. I appreciate it. And if you want to learn more about how to create useful content, follow me and continue to engage on my content. And if you have any questions that you want to ask, feel free to ask in the comments here on any other piece of content that I put out. Thanks again for joining, and I'm out. Let me put on some music before I go. You know, my related videos, useful content music as we go out. I like this music, it's good. All right, bye everybody, and see you soon. It's good music.